Westfield.
And I'm Nico. I'll be second pronunciation. Actually, my stuff is still in the board.
Oh yeah.
Great.
And then you said 2 adds.
2 advantages, yeah. And team, are you good with like some speed? It's just case.
Of course.
Okay. Oh, and I agree instability. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Wait, LO.
I'm so excited. Okay. If everybody's ready.
We are not ready. Just give me one more second to finish rolling sheets.
Okay.
Yes,
First paper flow tournament. Sorry. First paper flow tournament.
Do you guys not flow your last round?
Well, yeah.
Oh,
first
yes.
paper flow tournament. Like I said, first tournament.
Oh, first tournament reading flow. I guess. Yeah.
So sorry about that. I think we should be.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, sorry. We just.
Okay, everyone ready? Time starts. So proud to affirm the resolution that Bosnia and Herzegovina should transition from a consociational system to a majoritarian democratic system. First, a little bit of background on the demographic makeup of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'll refer to it as Bosnia throughout my speech. Basically, it's split up between 3 ethnic groups. Bosniaks and Croats, who mostly live in Bosnia, and Serbs, who live in what's called RS. Basically a separate region that's essentially an ethnic enclave for Serbia. Respectively, the Bosniaks are predominantly Muslim, the Croats are predominantly Catholic, and the Serbs are predominantly Eastern Orthodox. I'll talk more about religious tensions later. The Bosniaks are slightly less than half the population, but they're split between Shia, Sunni, and non-denominational Muslims. The Serbs are about 30%, and the Croats are about 20%. One thing to keep in mind before I get into the specifics of the plain text: disunity and the tyranny of the majority emerges in majoritarian systems when there's only 2 groups, and thus one always has a majority and always has exclusive governing power. The distinction is that when there are more than 2 societies at play here, or more than 2 ethnic groups at play here, that forces collaboration. Again, we think like most modern parliamentary systems are a great warrant for this. When you have 17 parties instead of 2, no one can force things through on party line basis. You have to form blocks. Yeah, go ahead.
Specifically in the 3-party system, is it not often the case that the smallest party gets phased out by the other 2 because they simply can't?
There won't be a 3-party system. There are many more splits within these groups. Again, I mentioned one that's the Shia, Sunni, non-denominational split within the Bosniaks. There's other splits between them. So specifically, our plan is going to be to establish a democratic, non-quoted, unified parliamentary system based on Western Europe, Britain, Germany, etc., for legislative and executive governance across Bosnia and Herzegovina. A couple important things to keep in mind here as the essentially delta of the round. Again, this is sort of proportional representation. 2, this is non-quoted, which is unlike the consociational system, which essentially its defining feature is that certain groups are granted quotas to certain offices. And then the third and most important part is that it is unified. It is a shared government entirely between RS and Bosnia writ large. Okay, any questions on topic case?
POC, actually, yeah.
Okay.
So your thing about non-quota, clarify that again for me. Non-quota means that they get quoted positions in government?
No, non-quota means there are non-quota positions in government. Yeah. A consociational system has quotas for different positions in government, i.e. like the defense minister has to be a Bosniak and the treasury minister has to be a Serb. This is not. Okay. First advantage is going to be on civil war. One, the uniqueness is that this region has always been characterized by war. It's been characterized by war since the first decades of the 20th century, and in the last decades of the 20th century, it was the site of multiple genocides occurring predominantly by this guy Dodik, who we'll talk about. In the second uniqueness point, which is that we are on the brink of civil war and separation again right now. Subpoint A, last year, the separatist leader Dodik, who had run RS for the last couple decades, was unseated by allegations of corruption. B, Dodik claimed that consociationalism weakened, consociationalism weakened his ability to legislate because he didn't have access to enough positions of power. C is that he was literally a war criminal in the 1990s and he finally got arrested as a result of those crimes. D is that his successor is this guy named Karan, who is even more hardline and says he will carry on the legacy of Dodik as far as he can. E is that there was massive fraud alleged in this government, whereby the Croats basically said that Karan didn't actually win the election. The more moderate non-separatist leader won, but Karan is saying he won and he's backed up by paramilitaries, which I'll get into in our third uniqueness point, which is about broader conflict. Specifically, that Dodik is ideologically, economically, and militarily aligned with Viktor Orban of Russia and Vladimir Putin. B is that Hungarian and Russian paramilitaries have begun being imported into RS in order to protect Dodik and Karan's positions of power. C is that the EU is responding with an escalation of EU4, which is the EU force that is in Bosnia, i.e. the other part of the region. They're sending in more troops. Onto the links. One is that we're about to tip into civil war. 3 reasons. A is that this poses an existential threat to Karan Koran and Dodik. They know that if they get removed from power by any means, they will probably be sent to prison by the rest of their lives, which means they have no incentive to de-escalate or negotiate. B is about miscalculation. The more troops you have in a region, the exponentially higher chance you have of eventually somebody firing a first shot that starts a war, especially with Article 5 nations involved. C is ethnic tensions, again, make civil war much more likely because gratuitous acts of violence are far more likely to occur. 2 is going to be a spillover. A, again, there's a heavy international presence in the region. B is that Russian paramilitaries love to engage first. Look at how the Wagner Group engages in Sudan, for example. Russian paramilitaries love to start conflicts. 3 is going to be specifically the plan solves for 2 reasons. A, we address the root cause of the conflict, which is about the harms in governance caused by consociationalism. B is that we signal a desire for unity, which leads Quran and Dodik to be willing to come to the negotiating table because there's a signal of concessions coming. On to the impacts. One is going to be on war crimes specifically. Again, you can look to the empirics from the 90s when the conflicts occurring in Bosnia and Herzegovina were characterized.
Yep. Sorry, what was your second point on plan solves? I got the first part.
Root cause and signaling.
Okay.
War crimes which were described as genocide as well as sociocide, i.e. the entire destruction not just of a group of people physically, but also of their entire intellectual and academic systems, their ability to advance as a society. 2 is broader miscalculation. We believe that the introduction of foreign militaries dramatically increases the risk of broader miscalculation, especially again between Article 5 nations and Russia. 3 is that there's dramatic economic slowdown caused by military buildup in the region as the governments involved are forced to spend more and more money hiring foreign paramilitaries. Our second advantage is on corruption. On the uniqueness, 1, Bosnia and Herzegovina is extremely corrupt. It's the 111th most corrupt nation out of 180. It's extraordinarily corrupt, largely because of this consociational system. 2 here is about the cronyism that enables, whereby people are incentivized to only give, or in fact demanded to only give office seats to people that follow them. This means that, like campaign finance, for example, like Bosnians in power dedicate money to Bosnians because the parliament is extraordinarily small, smaller than most comparable nations. This enables a cycle of continuously re-entrenched power in small groups. 3 is spillover. I don't know what 3 is. Whatever. Moving on. The links. 1, cronyism is impossible in the world of majoritarian democracy for 3 reasons. The first is that there's simply more elections. There's more offices getting filled. 2 is that it's decentralized, which means that you don't just have a guarantee of power for one group or another. And 3 is again signaling here. 2 is that this increases unity. A, we have rhetorical solvency here. Again, this is kind of similar to signaling. The point is that we establish these principles of majoritarian governance that are self-fulfilling prophecies. 3 here is going to be corruption safeguards get implemented. Corruption safeguards never get implemented in a consociational system because one party always views that they're being attacked, but when they're done as a coalition government in a majoritarian system, they're much more likely to be endorsed. 4 is that this lets them join the EU. The main obstacle to joining the EU right now is the allegations of corruption. Onto the impacts. 1 is going to be trade. They have the lowest export rate in Europe and one of the highest unemployment rates. A here is going to be that an EU free trade within the EU solves because they get to export to Europe. B, this increases their purchasing power because their currency demand increases when demand for exports from Bosnia increases. That means that they are able to then go on and buy cheap imports from the rest of Europe and from the rest of the world. 2 is going to be on infrastructure. A, cronyism and corruption destroys the ability to produce efficient schools, hospitals, etc., which are key for societal advancement and ending the cycle of poverty. B is that poverty is the internal link to instability. Like terrorist groups and paramilitary groups use people who are starving, offering them food. This is what Boko Haram and ISIS and Al-Shabaab do. Use that to garner recruitment. Extremism flourishes under systems of poverty as people look for a villain. 3 is going to be on trust. Cross-apply what I told you about ethnic tensions in the first advantage. Trust goes up, which lowers the risk of ethnic tensions and ethnic conflict in the future. For those reasons, vote aye.
Thanks. Nice job. Okay. So I'm gonna touch briefly on topic case. Sorry, somebody got something papers. I'm gonna touch briefly on topic case. Where's the sheet? Keep passing. 2, I guess, disadvantages. And then I'm just gonna I'm sorry, I had a hard time flowing, so I'm just gonna go down the net. Or I'm sorry, down the app. It's not gonna be I'm not gonna be able to signpost where I am, but I'm gonna touch on the points. Okay. Yep. Is anyone not ready? We're good. Starting on top of case. The divide is mischaracterized. The Shia-Sunni divide exists, yes, but it's largely going to be secondary to the divide between the Muslim Bosniaks and everyone else. That's going to be the primary divide. Anything Sunni or Shia is going to be secondary. You can say you fill out the plan, but my dissents are going to take care of that. Dissent 1 is going to be on backlash. A is the uniqueness. You can cross-apply a lot of what he says. 1 is going to be the Bosnia and Herzegovina, I always call Bosnia, government structure is going to be really, really bad. You can cross-apply what he says. 2 is going to be on the genocides from 1992 to 1995. The Serbs, cross-apply what he says about the division. They ethnically cleansed each other. It was like said to be kind of like similar to the Holocaust in levels of intensities and depravity of the conditions. It was awful. It was solved by the 1995 Dayton Agreement, but that's like a band-aid on the bully wound. It really, really does not solve. The third uniqueness here is going to be on current tensions. We think, look to Dodik. Dodik got unseated right now. He denied the genocide, said the genocide did not work. He said, quote, coexistence is not possible here, and then he was forcibly removed from office and put in jail for a year. B is going to be, so that's like the uniqueness of like what it looks like right now. B is the links. One is to be on the plan passes, and there's fear. They're scared of historical tensions. If your entire racial group was genocided 30 to 35 years ago, you're not going to be ready to engage with the others in an open democracy. It doesn't work. I like to point out the fact that nowhere in their entire case do they actually explain how they solve for the real root cause, which is ethnic, religious, and cultural tensions and historical tensions. It doesn't work. The second link is going to be the plan passes and there's anger. We think there's religious. They have drastic religious divides, which go deep. Dodik drew parallels to Israel and Palestine in his rhetoric, and how the Muslims could not coexist with like the Jewish minority there, for example, and the Catholics. B is going to be on cultural divide. We think they have deep cultural divides, which is going to make it very hard for them to coexist. C is going to be on historical divides. You can cross-apply everything I say about the genocide. It doesn't work. We think there's a lot of hatred towards each other, which turns into anger when you try to have integration. Because there's historical trauma that means that you can't actually integrate. People are going to be too angry at each other. C is going to be the impacts. No. We think there's going to be a setback. Even if like nothing worse happens, you still have further democratic setbacks, because you can't move towards peace when you still have these deep divides, and people are going to be scared and angry at each other because you haven't actually solved for the root cause, which is the cultural divide, which means that you have a setback in the culture. We think we're moving towards a good point right now, and so far as like Dodik got unseated, and like it's not supposed to be any better. 2 is going to be on violence. So I think anger and fear leads to lashing out when people aren't ready. This is probably going to be awful for like Bosnia. Like we've seen what Bosnia has happened in the past, 1992, 1995 genocide. They're willing to hurt each other. They talk about it in their own speech on how awful it is. It's very likely we're going to just accelerate those impacts when we try to force it. I'll take POI. Yeah.
Sorry, your only warrant for the status quo improving is that Dodik was removed from office protesting that removal.
Yeah, I'm going to get it more to on your case. I'm just like, as like terms. I just time allocation stuff. Okay. 2. Okay. This side 2 is going to be further polarization. Subpoint A on what happens in a majoritarian rule. 1. In a majoritarian system, different ideological groups and political groups need to vilify other groups to succeed. Look to the U.S. The base of the representative Senate, the Republicans hate the Democrats like crazy, and we are a drastically more stable than Bosnia. 2. This can be okay. All you need is to win an election majoritarian, is to make all the other options seem really, really bad, which means you're likely to be really, really polarized. Importantly, all you need is like a simple majority. So because the Bosniaks, by their own volition, is like upwards of 50% of the people in the country, what's likely to happen is that you see them to have all the power, which means they can essentially do whatever they want. Even if you don't, So point B is going to be, what are the unique harms of majoritization? 1, Bosnia is really ethnically divided into 3 groups, the Bosnian Serbs and the Croats. Because of the variance and like the disputes, like historically with like the genocide, they want each other dead. 2 is, what does this mean? A, in the status quo, however inefficient it may be, groups need to interact with each other. It's forced because they need to like come together to make policy. A, in the status quo, the nature of the government is such that the 3 groups all have representation with equal power, despite the fact they have different ethnic majorities. They all have their own military, and they can all kind of coexist while working through historical trauma. But B, firstly, we think this further, when you pass the plan, you hugely further hatred. A, in this contention, I warrant to you how majoritarian systems functions. B, in Bosnia, people hate each other enough. We're telling voters that like the other side is evil, furthers polarization. It's also going to be a really good democratic strategy because you can use all the historical tension and make it really, really historically good. So even if everyone doesn't kill each other instantly, because you massively accelerate the conflict, it doesn't matter because your government is super polarized. All right, go to the ad. Starting on civil war, the status quo solved. We're getting better. Dodik was unseated during, like, it was just described as, quote, like, he was doing what's called like a mirror genocide. We accuse the other side of trying to genocide you as a justification for genocide. What happened? The Genocide Watch pointed this out, and then the EU and like large organizations were able to unseat him. Is the status quo bad right now? Maybe, but you drastically make it worse on their side of the house. That's all we need to win on, is that status quo is comparatively better. We think over the past like 20, 35 years, we're moving in a better place. Yes, have there been spikes in violence? Yeah. I think in the past, like I think in like 2015, there was an armed standoff between groups, which is like bad, obviously, but compared to the genocide we saw in 1992 and 1995, it's clear that we're getting better over time. This is a war-torn country with a genocide. Yeah, when he talks about uniqueness, where there's going to be conflict, yeah, maybe. What you don't want to do is force it before historical trauma is getting better. We think the status quo is improving extremely slowly. We think both sides suck here. What you're going to do is take the lesser of two evils, where you vote neg and don't accelerate until like a true, like actual civil war. We think this also. We think like the idea that we're like imminent civil war and the status quo is wrong. We think Russia is not actually able, when they're fighting on Ukraine, is not actually able to engage in like this war. They also have like no incentive to. It's like they're somewhat allied with Bosnia, but like they have their own things. Number one, number two, they're not like super economically intertwined. They seem to have no like this is just a baseless assertion. There's no reason why Russia could actually do it. We can't actually verify any of the like metrics here. Anyways, additionally, we think, yeah, they have militaries, but we think there's a further incentive to try to not actually go to war, because it means that you could lose all your power, and you could get unseated like Dodik did. If you go to war, and you try to do another genocide, you're going to get unseated like Dodik. So you can turn the link and say that it's actually, it's less likely, while they're separated, to go to war, because there's no incentive to, because they want to remain in the status quo, where at least they have power over themselves. Also, we think it's more existential for various leaders if they have the possibility of just losing all their power because they're an ethnic minority. So we can turn like this link here, because it's probably just not going to be the case that that people are going to be less existential if you prevent that, if you take away their power. Because in a majoritarian state, the ethnic majority is going to, and the ethnic and religious majority are going to rule. So yeah, you could link turn and say that like they're going to want to go to war because that's their only chance of survival. Otherwise, you get pushed down the democratic government. Then we think like the impacts don't actually work very easily. So okay, on the corruption argument, yeah, we think corruption exists in the status quo. We think they make it worse though, because number one, we think they push out all the other foreign governments. When you make, again, Kosovo would say top of case that there's like the ethnic thing comes first because of all the historical burdens, which probably means that when you give something with like 50 to 60% of the population and have them be democratically elected, they're going to do even more corruption, and they are going to like be probably worse on the net. Just because like overall, they're worse, right?
Okay, good speech.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, once again, my name is Kevin. For a quick off-time roadmap, I'm just going to do neg in order, app in order, alright?
Do we have sheets for neg?
No, I have a copy of it, but it's not working.
Do you guys need paper? Oh.
No, maybe we have paper, it's just a little slow, sorry.
Did you slow the neg on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm using that.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
You guys good?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. So, once again, quick off-time roadmap. It's just going to be neg in order, app in order, alright? My time starts in 3, 2, 1. First, on framing or background, whatever you want to call it, our opponents tell us that the biggest divide in Bosnia and Herzegovina right now is not between all the different ethnic and religious groups, it's between Bosniaks and everybody else. We say that they don't offer any reason why this is true. We're going to say that this is not true. We see that there are deep-rooted religious conflicts even within the Bosniaks. We see that there's a divide between Shia and Sunni and non-denominational Muslims within the Bosniaks, but more so there are also Croats and Serbs who are Orthodox and Catholic and Orthodox respectively. These are going to be the conflicts that are happening. It's not going to be just two parties, the Bosniaks versus everybody else. It's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 parties, because there are multiple different religious groups currently inside Bosnia and Herzegovina that have to form and work together under a parliamentary system if they want to govern a country and win an election. Next, on to our opponent's first contention. I don't see the tagline here, but on to uniqueness. We're also going to see that there are political just back on background, we're going to see that there's political disagreements within ethnic groups, even within the same ethnic groups as well. Not everyone of the same ethnic and religious group votes together. People have political disagreements as well. There's going to be different factions and different parties, sure.
In America, despite the fact that like Republicans have like the Freedom Caucus and like other things, do they still largely vote as a bloc because they're united against an immigrant?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. There are a vastly increasing number of Republicans that are even voting to like draft up 25th Amendment like articles of impeachment against Donald Trump.
Peel, right?
P-O-O?
P-O-I.
Oh, P-O-I. No, I just took one. Okay, on to our opponent's first contention on uniqueness. We're going to say that our opponent's uniqueness is all backwards here, as in our opponents are telling us exactly why Bosnia and Herzegovina is bad right now. Yes, there was ethnic cleansing happening. There's a lot of ethnic tension. They are on the brink of war. This is what we are telling you right now. But our opponent's links are backwards as well. Our opponent's links are basically saying that these two groups are not ready to engage. We have 4 responses to this. First, we're going to say that it's a try or die. Look towards the fact that our uniqueness about like the deep-rooted ethnic conflicts, as well as Russian and EU involvement in the region, means that civil war is on the brink right now. If we don't take any action towards preventing civil war is going to happen. This is going to be a try or die. Secondly, we're going to say that institutional trust is going to be really important. Like taking institutional trust in the people is a really important first step to taking down ethnic barriers. Because if there's no institutional trust, then these two groups are going to trust each other because of things like fear mongering happening from terrorist groups that are feeding people that are currently unfed. Actually, I only have 3 responses. The third response is that probably the more deep-rooted conflict is going to be between the EU and Russia right now. We see that Bosniaks and Serbs and Croats aren't the only actors currently acting within Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's also external groups like NATO acting in EU4, which is the European Union force in Bosnia, like the Federation of Bosnia, and the Russian and Hungarian forces are in the Republic of Srpska right now that are helping the Bosnian Serbs that are also basically fighting a proxy battle and maybe even starting a civil war because of their own conflicts. Without taking down these groups, without taking down the barriers between these two states in this one country, there's no way to prevent ethnic conflicts in the future or even happening right now. Onto our opponent's second contention on polarization. Our opponents basically tell us that in America, the only way parties win is by vilifying other groups, and this is going to make ethnic conflicts worse. We're going to say that this only happens under a 2-party system or even a 3-party system. But we say that under a parliamentary system in Bosnia and Herzegovina, with all its vast and varied, religious beliefs, political beliefs, etc., there has to be some sort of coalition formed for a group to actually win. Not a single group has more than 50% of the vote. Sure, Bosniaks as a ethnicity have 50.1% of the population, but within them there are divides between Shia and Sunni, different Muslim denominations, and also there are different differences in political beliefs. We think that there's going to be multiple parties, way more than 2 or 3, like our opponents saying. These 6 or 7 parties, even if they have a plurality, do not have a majority, which means that they have to form coalitions, as in work together, if they want to win more than 50% of the vote, which is what happens in parliamentary systems in other countries such as Germany. This is a tried and tested approach, and this is why ethnic conflicts aren't as bad in other European countries with majoritarian democratic ideals and parliamentary systems. Finally, our opponents also tell us there's going to be negativity in elections. We're going to say that if you're being really negative about other people, there's probably going to be some backlash against you as well. People don't want to be negative. People want to look towards the Obama-McCain election, right? That was a really good election because they were all positive towards each other, and both candidates were positive. Whatever. So our opponent's third uniqueness point under polarization is that groups need to come together. Groups currently come together under the consociational system. We say that no, currently under the system, quotas mean that people don't have to work together. These quotas mean that people that are, as long as they're loyal to whatever ethnicity they are, gets a spot in the government, which means that they don't actually have to work together because they have infinite veto power if they belong to one of the 3 groups and gets elected to one of the quota positions. We see that under a majoritarian system, there is no way to win an election without actually working together with other groups. Okay, onto our case. Sure. As like an overview level response, our opponents tell us that the SQO is getting better. The SQO is getting better. Look for the fact that this is just not going to be true. We say that even though Dodik has been ousted by the European Union, Karan, his successor, is basically worse. Karan has told the media publicly that once again he also hates Muslims and is also going to try and carry out Dodik's legacy as far as he possibly can, with some people even believing that Dodik from prison is controlling Karan from the backside. So we see that Karan, at the very, very least, is the same as Dodik, if not worse. Next, our opponents tell us that, there has been break before, and in 2015 there was a whole standoff, but that's still alleviated. We see that in 2015 there probably wasn't Russian and Hungarian involvement in Republic of Srpska. The main difference right now is that the European Union is sending more and more troops every single year to the Federation of Bosnia, and Russia and Hungary are sending more and more troops every single year to Republic of Srpska, which is going to make this a whole regional conflict as well. This is going to be different from 2015. Okay, on links, our opponents give us 2 responses. Firstly, our opponents tell us that Russia, firstly, can't help because they're busy with the Ukraine war. This is just untrue. They're helping other countries as well, but also Hungary and what's his name? Orban is also helping Republic of Srpska with the Serbs in the country. And secondly, our opponents tell us that Russia doesn't need to help. We're going to say that this, maybe Russia, the country, Putin himself doesn't need to help, but these are Russian militaries, like the Wagner group, that are in this region that operate independently from Moscow and the Russian elites. Okay, next on links, our opponents tell us that if there is a war, then Quran is going to get unseated, so Quran doesn't want a war. We're going to see that this is probably untrue because extend the link level analysis my partner gives you that Dodec and Quran sees this as an existential threat. Yeah, our opponents tell us that this threat is going to be more existential if groups like Croats and Serbs view the threat as more view the threat as more existential because they are a minority. But look towards the fact that minorities, even a majority like the Bosniaks, can't win an election without working together with other groups like the Serbs and Croats in a democratic, like majority democratic system. What else do I have to extend here? Yeah, extend signals. Yeah. Okay, so on our second contention of corruption, our opponents didn't read many responses. What? Oh yeah, it's just also extend all the impacts of civil war. If a civil war does happen, it's probably going to lead to war crimes, genocide again, like cultural erasure. This might even lead to like a broader war in the region. It's going to be like a Russian-EU proxy war. That's going to be bad for people surrounding the region as well. On the second contention of corruption, our opponents didn't really respond to this, other than saying the fact that under the current system, corruption is harder than under a majority democratic system, where people who win 60% of the votes get all the power. This is once again not going to be true because of our analysis on the fact that they have to form a coalition in order to win any election. But secondly, look towards the fact that currently there are like explicit quotas for specific ethnic groups that get like infinite veto power in the government right now, which means that they have like they are more corrupt. Also, just extend all the links and impacts. I don't think our opponents responded to those other than negative. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, start on that. It's not that one. Okay, start on that. No, just stay here.
Okay. Okay. So, top of case. This is a trenches round. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start with basically a collapse at the top of my case. So we're going to go for one thing that we have, and we're going to go for it now. Then we're going to give responses to their case at the end. Sorry, guys. It's going to be a little messy on flow. If everybody is ready, it's going to be.
I just want to flow this on like a new sheet, by the way.
Yeah, like exactly. This is basically like it's an extension of basically a one-liner that I said. Sorry. If everybody's ready, I'm going to start my time in 3, 2, 1. The point where we're going to fundamentally win this round is on the idea of tyranny of the majority, which is despite the fact that my opponents repeatedly try to prereq, they fundamentally misunderstand how majoritarianism works. Let's look at the prereq they've read like 5 times in this round. They know that, hey, there's divisions among these groups, so despite the fact that the Bosniaks have an objective majority, not over the other 2 groups, but they have more than 50% of the population, they're not going to be more aligned and inclined to help other Bosniaks, because there's so much religious tension that they don't care. The fundamental issue with this is that it's completely wrong. A Bosniak has more allegiance to another Bosniak with a religious discrepancy than any other Serb or Croat. The reason for this is because polarization and disputes run high. Sure, maybe a Shia Muslim and sorry, I don't know the names, I'm trolling, but maybe 2 different kinds of Muslims disagree largely on religions, but at the same time, it doesn't matter, because it's significantly worse and it's significantly harder to interact with a group that has repeatedly genocided you in the past, has repeatedly killed you in the past, because the issues with these different groups is that they continuously kill each other and are at each other's throats. It is significantly harder to accept that.
Yeah, doesn't conflicts like the Iran-Iraq war between Shia and Sunni Muslims prove that these kinds of genocides are just as likely to occur within religions as well as between them?
Right, this is a great point, except that this is less personal to the individual, right? Because between Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs, it is significantly closer and significantly bigger of a conflict, because you might have had a literal family that was killed in these conflicts, so recent and they're constantly fighting each other. And there's the primary contradiction of ethnic groups. That's your primary allegiance is to your ethnic group through and through. That will always be the case. That is why we beat their prereq. What does this mean? What are the impacts of this argument? Okay, first of all, the reality of the situation is that ethnic groups are going to die out completely. Why is that? And the only possible situation for my opponents to win this round is assuming that Serbs and Croats can come together to defeat the tyranny of the majority that Bosniaks would unfortunately have. The issue is that this is fundamentally not possible for 2 reasons. First of all, Bosniaks have more than 50%, which is something that they tell you themselves. So objectively, even if they do come together, they do not have the manpower. But if you believe that some Bosniaks are going to stray away, the other issue with this is that it requires collaboration for 2 ethnic groups that are fundamentally so opposed to each other that they can never work together. Why is that? It's 2, not 3. The reason that it's 2 is because Serbs and Croats would need to work together to defeat Bosniaks in terms of a majoritarian election. The only issue with that is that it will never happen. A point that I'm going to stress a lot in my speech is the amount of genocide and conflict and wars that have happened in this region make it fundamentally impossible, completely impossible for these groups to function and work together. That is why in status quo, the model of status quo kind of sucks. It is better than what my opponents are proposing, because what my opponents are proposing leads to ethnic cleansing and death of various ethnic groups. But the model in status quo requires these groups to interact with each other, which they have a lot of difficulty doing. And when you make it to that whole voter basis and not political officials, so like literally every Croat and every Serb would need to come together to defeat Bosniaks entirely, it becomes fully impossible. It will never happen. So not only is it mathematically not possible for this to happen simply because Bosniaks have a majority, but at the same time, It doesn't even matter, because even if you somehow, my opponents buy the fact that you can come together, or like that they find a way to get around the simple majority point, you would need to warrant that these ethnic groups that have historically been fighting, which my opponents stress so much in their case, there's so much unrest and so much tensions and things getting closer to civil war. These groups would need to work together to gain a majority, and this will never happen. What are the impacts of this?
Even if they prevent ethnic war, genocide happens later.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, even if they provide some level of ethnic war like they're fighting, Bosniaks are eventually going to win that anyways, and it's going to lead to more genocide in the future, so it is going to be ethnic cleansing. Again, because even if my opponents want to make the argument that, hey, those two groups together can defeat the Bosniaks, those two groups are not together, something that I've harped on a lot in my case. Now, what are the actual impacts of this? It means ethnic groups are going to die. In what sense? Bosniaks feel that they have a complete and utter majority in terms of elections. They're going to advocate on policy that is going to unilaterally benefit Bosniaks and hurt everybody else. The problem with that is it leads to a couple of situations. First of all, systems of like structural violence. Basically, for the entirety of the future, Croats and Serbs are going to be living under a system of oppression that they can do nothing to solve because they need to get together. And even if you somehow manage to warrant that they get together in the future, by the time they get together, they're going to be weakened so much that it does not matter. And there's going to be fighting, and there's going to be complete inability to take control away from the Bosniaks. That means, uniquely, that the only alternative is going to be that either religious groups or ethnic groups live under complete and total oppression for the rest of their lives, or they die out. And the reason that this is a unique issue is because no matter how my opponents try to tell you that it's try or die, this is simply the politician's fallacy. You can make things so much worse. First of all, allows you to see like a decent level of warranting as to why the status quo is getting better. Polarization is going down. You're kicking people, like corrupt officials, out of government, something that'll go into my reputations. But at the same time, even if you don't buy that, status quo could be infinitely awful and have existence of different ethnic groups. If my opponent's advocacy is to go up here and try or die and end 2 of the 3 religious groups in the region, then it does not matter because that will always be worse. You cannot warrant that a lot of tension, a lot of distrust, and the potential towards civil war, not a guarantee, but a potential civil war, will not be indefinitely worse than systems of oppression and structural violence that will eventually lead to a civil war that will lead to deaths of every single Croat and every single Serb. Because like they talk about, suicide, there's going to be complete destruction of the groups in this region. Now, I kind of went into the prereq already. They're going to go up in the PMR and they're going to try to tell you that there's so many divisions that it doesn't matter. And these groups are already so divided that there's not going to be a way to get a strong enough majority to actually do anything about it. But again, this fails. This fails on 2 levels. First of all, the ethnic groups are always going to be your primary allegiance. Because religion, while it is a huge thing, is going to be less deeply interpersonal to these people as opposed to the ethnic groups. Because the ethnic groups is the way they're raised, the way they're determined by the way they live their lives is based on those ethnic groups, right? Because Serbs and Croats don't care if you're Shia or Sunni Muslim. I do know the names. They care purely about whether in the future, whether you are a Bosniak or not. And because of that, Bosniaks are going to live their lives primarily under the assumption that they're going to be attacked by other ethnic groups. The ethnic group divide is always going to be bigger than the religious one. And even if there's religious discrepancies in terms of Bosniaks, it doesn't even matter. Because if you buy my warning about the majority arguments anyways, what ends up happening is that they're going to come together and ignore the religious differences because it will unilaterally benefit both religious groups so much that because people care about what happens to themselves, first and foremost, they're going to do more. Now into responses. So again, flows for this round is super messy, that's why I'm collapsing for 6 minutes. Let's talk about it. So they talk about, they talk about how they might talk about how they need to form coalitions. The ethnic divide comes, that's our argument, the ethnic divide comes first. They kill everybody, that's the point. Bosniaks are going to unilaterally murder every single individual. They could get access to any of their intentions if they'd like, but it doesn't even matter. Because if I'm warranting to you correctly that every single ethnic group is going to be dead into the future, then you can have all your arguments about potential Russian invasion. It doesn't matter. There's no one left to invade. That's why we are going to win this round, really simply put on this collapse. Okay. So they're going to carry out a genocide because they have majority of the government and they have the military, something that my partner just came up with that I had no idea to bring up in this entire round, is that if Bosniaks control the government, they also control the military, which means they have unique power over everybody else. So even if you don't buy that more people beats less people, if more people also have a military and less people do not have a military, then it does not matter. Simply put, we are winning this round on so many levels purely because ethnic divide will always come first, and no amount of religious discrepancies and no amount of breakdowns will do anything. Yes, there has been a lot of involvement in the past.
So now it's done.
There's no point. This argument about involvement in the past is entirely not unique.
No.
Right, sorry. Now this argument about involvement now is entirely not unique. There's also been a lot of involvement in the past, and nothing changed, which is why they keep telling you that everything is trending towards being worse. And even if you don't buy anything I've said, which honestly, Judge, I don't even blame you. It doesn't matter. Because polarization in these regions will go up so much that it will become fundamentally impossible to do anything. And then finally, like, on their point of civil war, what stops Dover from getting re-elected by the government, like, by the tyranny of the majority? Our whole point is about tyranny of the majority. What stops oppressive dictators from being elected again in the future and doing all the damages that my opponents keep telling you they're going to do now, again in the future? Really clearly, because ethnic divides will always come first, you need to vote the opposition side. Holy shit. Where's speech up everything?
It's okay. It's okay. Really the topic got bro. Okay. Oh, I have a formal speech, not an English speech. No, I give a formal speech. Okay. Anyone not ready? I'm not ready. Okay. Give me this. I'll give my time. Starting at the top, I guess extend that the status quo is getting better. We can see right now that the EU is working. Look to what happened just now. Dodik got unseated from power by their own by their own concession. That means the EU and how they function is fundamentally going to work, and the EU sending in troops has historically worked. When Nico tells you that involvement has happened in the past, when they say no involvement has happened, yeah, it has. What do you think the EU and the UN have been doing in Bosnia for the past 30 years? Why? Who do you think facilitated the Dayton Agreement I bring up in the LOC? Clearly involvement has worked. Clearly you can extend that when foreign things get involved, the status quo tends.
The argument that foreign actors have led to peace treaties in the past is
Wait, no,
the
it was
argument.
like the really, really weirdly convoluted phrasing that I was talking about how involvement in the past didn't help, therefore it's not going to help in the future either. That was
I can answer you. So the argument I'm making is that it seems like the status quo is getting better because foreign actors are doing stuff, right? I think we say the EU facilitated peace,
I do not have that on my glove. You guys have that on your consideration.
Yeah, okay. But we think even if you're not buying that, the Dayton Agreement was facilitated by the EU, and that the EU has historically prevented things. We think number two, you're just buying that over time the status quo gets better as time heals. This is why in 2015 we saw violence, but it wasn't near the scale of the 1995 genocide. So we think to the extent that time heals and you just need to let the historical burden play out, we're probably winning there. But then third, we're gonna probably outweigh, even if you buy other links into civil war and you're buying the fact that that you just have instant civil war right now, we think we're gonna outweigh. Okay, the second part here is gonna be on Nico's collapse. So majoritarianism necessitates that the majority group will have power. Because the Bosniaks have 60% of the majority, they control the government, they control all the power by there. And insofar as you have now a centralized government instead of a split one, and they now control the military, and they control the arms of the government, and they control the monopoly on force, they can then go ahead and pretty much just genocide everyone. That's the issue. Because they don't solve for the root cause of the historical burden, and the three things I give you, cultural, religion, and historical issues, anything you do just makes it worse. And the group with the majority is likely to just kill. Okay. Now as a weighing claim, we think that the existence or the continuation of an ethnic group is always going to come above death. Even if there's 1 million deaths, we think as so long as that ethnic group isn't completely wiped out, it's comparatively not as bad. Why? We think ethnic identity is an incredibly important thing, and insofar as we destroy an ethnic identity, that's the worst thing you can do to a group of people by expunging them off the earth. Even if there's mass deaths in a civil war, the fact that that ethnic identity exists probably is less bad. We also think, I'm not gonna have time to extend the entire collapse, but extend what Nico says. But then secondly, what did I write? I'm not gonna do this. Which part? Oh yeah. Insofar as their case is always going to be, it is going to ignore the historical issues that you don't solve for. You're going to prefer the status quo, but even if there's war, it's not going to be to the full extent, where even if there's tons of deaths, the existence of the continuum of the ethnic group is always going to be better. We also think you can extend Nico's reasoning that you're simply never going to see.
Point of order,
Yeah.
pause time. Any response to the specific impacting word coming out of the PMC that the civil war that will occur as a result of the status quo directly leads to a renewal of genocide and sociocide is new in this round? I made those specific impacting arguments in the PMC.
I mean,
I think I'm doing a weighing argument that's. Oh,
wait, also, first of all, not only is that explicitly responded to by me, I addressed your sociocide point verbatim. Second of all, Alliance is weighing right now. And third of all, this argument isn't even directly responding to the fact of sociocide because we're saying it's not happening.
Yeah, we're saying with the civil war, we comparably less
I'm
bad.
saying any response. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, where was I? Oh yeah. And then this can never solve back for this issue because there's truly no reason for the other ethnic groups to ever come together to solve, because the issue is they're so affected by by all the reasons I pretty much give you in the LOC that they will never be willing to come together and solve for it, to unite against the Bosniaks, and they will essentially just fight back as a individual weaker powers until they're unfortunately expunged. So the only advocacy in this round that works is when you have a civil war at the worst, but they have an ethnic identity and they remain in their own triads. You're probably voting for us even if the probability of our links is really, really low, because we kind of just throw something together in the MO on magnitude, and because it's so much worse comparatively.
Thank you. Okay.
So, Nico.
Order of the PMR is going to be this sort of tension, top of case stuff, and then it's basically going to be advantage 2, advantage 1. If everyone's ready, time starts on my first word. 5 reasons you're not buying all the new block arguments about why ethnic tensions come before religious tensions. First is that they completely concede what Kevin tells you, that this is not just you putting a pin on your chest that says I am a Bosniak or I am a Serb. It is a vote. You are voting for somebody to represent you. So beyond whatever ethnic or religious allegiances you may have, you also have political allegiances that we would argue are even more personal, because while you might not particularly care about whether there's a war going on in RS, I bet you care about the price of bread, and you care about whether your local member of parliament is actually going to make that change. We think that that's more personal to people, so we think that we outweigh on the fact that this then creates enough parties that we're no longer at a state of total genocide. 2 is that we think that religion is pretty intuitively more personal than ethnic group, at the point where it's very possible for ethnic group to have no actual manifestation on your day-to-day life. Like, just because I'm Japanese and Kevin is Chinese doesn't actually mean that we're fighting with each other. Whereas we think that religion is something that directly affects your perception of the truth of the world, especially within religions. Again, I bring up this Iraq-Iran war in a POI, that there are disagreements within religion that become more fierce because you are disagreeing on a more subtle fundamental truth. Right? You agree on 95% of the picture, and that 5% gets blown so far out of proportion. We think that this more proximally affects your life and is thus more personal. 3, religion outweighs by their own warranting that comes out in the LOC when they tell you in their first time responding to the top of case that the main divide is between the Muslims and the Christians. They tell you in the LOC and then change in the block that the distinction here is between the Bosniaks and the Eastern Orthodox and Catholic Serbs and Croats, who basically throw aside their ethnic disagreements to unite behind religion. Their own warranting shows you that religion is a more proximal factor in these people's lives. 4, while Bosniaks constitute a majority, I want you to remember the number that Kevin told you. Bosniaks are 50.11% of the population. I'm not asking you to believe that everyone will vote based on religion or ethnic groups, religion or politics over their ethnic group. I'm asking you to believe that 1 in 500 will. Then, 5th and finally, they tell you that people act out of self-interest. But we tell you that the affirmation is not zero-sum. The affirmation is positive sum for everybody involved because of our second advantage on corruption. Again, Kevin does all the extension work here, but I think very clearly you can extend the linkage from cronyism, the rhetorical solvency, and the corruption safeguards, and the membership in the EU. Extend that through the internal links and the impacts. 2 really important points for you to pull out here. The first is that this solves for infrastructure, which solves for poverty, which solves for internal instability, and solves for ethnic tensions because people look for a boogeyman. As well as our third impact about institutional trust, where I cross-applied ethnic tensions from my first advantage and explained to you that specifically we rectify ethnic tensions by making public governmental institutions, which are the most visible place of ethnic tensions, perceived to be more conciliatory with each other. So, this is an obviously positive sum agreement for everybody involved. This is better than a war for everybody. Even if you're not the one that's getting destroyed, you're still losing people. So, we think that it is in the interest of Bosniaks, even if all 50.11% of them fall into a party together, to oblige. Then, on our first advantage about civil war, we think this is pretty clearly how we win. They tell you they did a decent amount of warranting on the uniqueness. They give you one warrant that Dodic was unseated that I literally read to you in my PMC and explained why this wasn't indicative of a broader uniqueness shift towards a better status quo. We're clearly winning on the uniqueness. We are clearly winning on the try or die. I don't just want you to say like a 0.1% chance, whatever it does, whatever. We give you very clear conceded uniqueness warranting about how there is a unique level of tension and risk of broader conflict in the status quo. They tell you international groups have been involved before. First of all, like, international groups couldn't have been involved, like these paramilitaries couldn't have been involved in 2015. Wagner hasn't been big since the Ukraine war when it then started getting involved in conflicts in like North and Western Africa. But also they tell you the EU facilitated the Dayton Accords. Yeah, we think that diplomacy is a different form of international involvement from paramilitary groups. Finally on the impacts, they tell you that genocide wouldn't occur. Again, I think this is pretty flagrantly new, but also I give you all of the explanations that these ethnic tensions have occurred before we see what the result of this civil war is. We're clearly winning on the uniqueness level that ethnic tensions are rising, and more specifically, we are winning on the uniqueness level that ethnic tensions are rising because of consociationalism. I definitely didn't pronounce that right, but the point remains. We are winning all of the links and internal links within our first advantage about civil war. We win the spillover. We win that Russian paramilitaries love to strike first. We win that the plan solves because it addresses ethnic conflict through all three mechanisms: poverty, trust, and elections. And finally, we win the impacts of civil war.
All right, good round, y'all.
All right, good round, guys.
I don't know. I couldn't frame it. I'm so sorry. Because I didn't have anything down, and then I wrote down what was going on. But it was so much fun. You guys want us to step out of the room for a minute? Or like,
Yeah, we'll go outside.
You're right. Oh, no.
Bro, like,
All right, Vika.
that is